Welcome to the Creative Cast. I'm your host, Tammy Munson, podcast producer, coach, and CEO of Wildfire Creative. Are you struggling to grow and monetize your podcast? Want to learn more about starting your own podcast? Are you looking for the secrets behind the business side of podcasting? Well, friends, you are in the right place. Here on the Creative Cast, I'm going to be sharing all the tips and tricks on all things podcasting for the faith-based podcaster. Each episode is going to contain powerful information to help you get started with your own podcast, learn the secrets of building a business, and of course, growing and monetizing your podcast. All right, y'all, without further ado, let's get started. Hey there, and welcome to the Creative Cast. I'm your host, Tammy Munson, and I am so happy that you are joining me today, and I'm so excited to be back for brand new episodes of the Creative Cast. And I cannot wait for you to hear what we have in store. We have brand new interviews. We have lots of great episodes coming up, including one all about ChatGPT and OpenAI. But first, I just have to share this with y'all because I think this is hilarious. But this is the third time I've done this intro now because there are birds chirping outside of my office podcast studio window. Now, normally, all the extra noise would make me mad because I know I'm going to have to edit that out. But you know what, y'all? I'm totally okay with it. I'm not even mad because that means spring is coming and the warmer weather and the sunshine and being outside again. And your girl cannot be happier about all of that because winter's hard in Iowa and in the Midwest. Anyway, I'm super excited about today's episode because this one was inspired by an Instagram direct message that I received from my friend Wendy. And Wendy says, "Hey, Tammy, I have a big question for you. How do you start a podcast when you don't even have an audience?" Great question. So let's just dive right into this. Now, as many of us know, starting any type of podcast, but especially one from scratch, takes time, effort, and patience. But if you remain dedicated and consistent and you deliver amazing content to your listeners, you will build that following, that loyal following that every podcaster wants, right? But let's address a couple of things before we get into all the tips. If you already have some sort of audience, you've got a little bit of following on various social media channels, or you have the beginnings of an email list, you already have some access to data about your future listeners. You know what content's going to work for them, and you can use those channels to promote your podcast. Doesn't matter whether you're on TikTok or LinkedIn or Instagram or a Facebook page or a Facebook group. Even if you just have an email list, you still have a way to get hard data to help you create your podcast and promote your podcast. Now, if you are completely starting from scratch, there's no audience at all whatsoever, you're going to need to make some educated assumptions about your audience. You're going to need to use your judgment, maybe past experience, observation, and even analyzing other podcast competitors. And you're also going to have to find some creative ways to promote yourself early on until you get to develop that audience. But for all you new podcasters or those who are planning a podcast, I'm going to have a little bit of a soapbox moment here. If you're in this process, so if you're in this boat, planning a new podcast, you're like, I'm going to have a podcast this year. This is the year I'm going to do it. Great. I am so excited for you. But don't rush the process. Because generally, when you rush the process, you're going to miss what the market needs and what your eventual audience is going to want. What does rushing the process mean? We've all seen the promotion, launch your podcast in 30 days. Can you do that? Yes, absolutely. If you are working with someone who has been through this process before and can lead you through that, by all means. If you launch your podcast with me, it's not going to be in 30 days. Because make no mistake here, y'all. The optimal time to start a podcast is anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks. It just depends on the type of podcast you want to have. So is it interview, co-host, narrative, storytelling? Who's the audience? All these kind of things. And I know that seems like a long time. And you just want to get to doing it because you're so excited about it. And I'm here for that. But don't rush this process because you're going to miss the mark. So, how do you get started if you don't have much or no audience at all? Well, the first question I want you to ask yourself is this. What do you know about your future audience? And I know that sounds a little weird, but if you don't know who your ideal listener is, you're not going to attract them. Your show is going to lack focus and dedication to meet your audience's demands. Now, you ladies have heard me talk about before, all about, yes, it's your show, but the content that you bring to the show is what your audience is going to want. Now, the best way to understand what your future audience is going to want is by creating a listener persona profile or a listener avatar. So, what's that exactly? So, if you don't have an audience at all, or only you've got just a few people that maybe you have like 50 people that follow you on Instagram, or 100, or maybe 25 people on your email list, whatever the number is, it doesn't matter. You want to imagine that you have one listener and one listener only, and talk to a specified audience avatar. What do they like? What do they don't like? Now, by asking these questions, it's going to boost your results significantly. One of the things you're going to do with this avatar is develop a marketing plan. And that, friends, is crucial to building your audience. Because the fact of the matter is, no matter who you are, you're going to have to do some marketing for your show. Like I said, you're going to have to think of creative ways to kind of get your show out there. And if this is your very first venture in creating online digital content, the idea of creating a complete podcast marketing plan probably is going to feel a little overwhelming initially. And that's okay. We're going to start small. But this is absolutely necessary because you need to build that strong foundation. You're not going to build your podcast in the sand because what's going to happen? It's not going to last. You're going to build it on the rock. Now, the main part about this here, the critical action here, is not creating the plan, it's implementing the plan. Now, I see so many new podcasters come out. They're so excited. They have the big build-up. They have launch week. They probably promote it for a couple more episodes. And then what happens? You don't hear much from them. Maybe they get a once-a-week post out of the deal. Maybe you might see it in email. But y'all, that's not enough. Now, the other way to grow your podcast, especially if you're starting from scratch, and this should be for all podcasters of any experience level, but especially new ones, you want to be consistent. Consistency is vital when building an audience because this is how you build trust with your audience and you grow that audience. So, what you want to do is develop a schedule and stick to it. If you say that your show is going to be published every week on Thursday, then you need to publish an episode every Thursday, no matter what. Or make sure that you schedule one for Thursday morning. Because it's like we've discussed before. In order to grow, you need to be consistent. Your listener needs to know that you're going to continue to be there because they're giving you their time. So if you want to ensure that you stay consistent, here's a tip. Hire a podcast producer or podcast manager to help make sure that you do. Shameless plug, y'all. I know. But that's what we do here at Wildfire. We help our clients stay consistent with their podcasts, whether that's through the content or the publishing frequency or the growth. That's one of the things that we do. That is what the job of a good podcast producer or manager can help you accomplish. Because regardless, your listeners are going to appreciate knowing when they can expect new episodes from you. Now, the next thing is something I want you to remember, that your podcast is a product and products have value, right? And if you don't understand where the value of your product, of your podcast lies, you can't make a good show. The content is not going to be good. Now, podcasts can be anywhere between delivering just pure entertainment value to creating awareness to actual problem solving. The value of it is determined by you. But without a value proposition designed for your listener avatar, you're going to stumble nailing that quality, and that's not what you want to do. So when you're creating your plan, you're creating this avatar, what do you want your podcast to be about? Why are you doing it? And what value does it bring to your listener? So for example, here at the Creative Cast, one of the things that I do is to give you tips and tricks on how to make a better show, right? Also provide recommendations, things that are going on in the industry. That's the value that I bring to the show, and that's the reason why you tune into the show. So you want to make sure that when you're creating this avatar, what are they getting from it? Let's say you have a podcast that's an online Bible study. What are they going to learn each week? You're going to be covering maybe a chapter. You're going to give them something to think about. Maybe you ask a question on every show. You provide a prayer on every show. And maybe even a recommended Bible verse. That's just one example. The other thing about building an audience, especially, if you're in this, I'm in the beginning stages, I don't really have much of an audience, is I want you to have patience. You gotta have patience when you're just getting started. Because honestly, realizing results is gonna take time. And this can be problematic for some podcasters. But y'all, I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's a long-term game here. It's not a flash in the pan. Now, some podcasts can be that way. And that's great. But for the majority, it's not. So if you're concerned because you've just launched your first episode and your show isn't trending on New and Noteworthy yet, it's like less than 5% of podcasters that are going to be listed in that. And you're in this for the long term. So if you're concerned because you've just launched your first episode and your show isn't trending yet, I want you to take a deep breath and chill. Now, I know that's a lot, but it's the best advice that I could give you. Because, y'all, almost nothing is an overnight success, podcasts included. But when you zoom out and you think about it, what is going to make your show successful differs from what will make someone else's show successful. Even if you're talking about the same thing, even if you're talking about faith, the Bible, the Gospels, whatever it may be, your show's going to be different because you bring something to the table that they don't. Whether it's your life experience or the research that you do or the guests that you have or the things that you're talking about it or the point of view that you're taking, whatever it is, it's going to be different. That's why I don't want you to carbon copy someone else's podcast. That's the worst thing you could do. Get ideas, yes. Go, oh, I like how they do that, or I don't like how they do that. That's great. But don't make it a carbon copy with a similar voice style, music, all that kind of stuff. You want it to be yours. And that's one of the beautiful things about having your own podcast. You can do what you want. You put your unique spin on it. And as you begin to evaluate your show's growth, or maybe initially lack thereof, you don't need to set those expectations for millions of downloads or thousands of subscribers. So instead, I want you to think about it this way. The only thing you need to do to ensure your success is by saying something that matters and that you are saying it well to the people who matter most, which is your audience. Now, friend, if you can do that, and I know that you can, your listeners will follow. So if you have any other questions about launching a podcast, just getting started, whatever it may be, please go ahead and shoot me an email at hello@wildfirecreativecompany.com. Now, friend, you know that I believe in you. I don't want any of the imposter syndrome, the overwhelm, the intimidating tech, whatever it is, stop you from reaching those goals that you have set for yourself. You can do this. You can do hard things, especially if God has called you to this, because He doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Now, you guys know I love doing this show. I do this podcast, not for me, but for you, because I want to share my expertise and my knowledge with you so that you can spend less time worrying about the details and more time spreading your message, sharing your story, and answering God's call. I hope that this episode was helpful for you. I hope that you have a great week, and I will see you next Monday. Bye, y'all.